Welcome back to church, man. We're so excited that you are here. We got some amazing things to talk about today. I don't know if you're into sports or if you play a musical instrument or if you just like winning, but today we're going to talk about competition. Do you compete? I think that's probably going to be the banner question today. Are you competing in your life? And if you are, what are you competing against and who are you competing for?
Ooh.
We're going to wrap this around Jesus and why he created us and why we're here. And so I'm excited about this topic. I get to discuss this with my best friend. So without further ado, Jason, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you compete and what are you competing at? Just give me a little bit.
Do I compete? Of course. Yes. Like I was going to sugarcoat it. I was going to find some creative way to maybe play around. No, I am like one of the most competitive people that I know.
Okay.
And in a weird way. So I know, I've talked to some people and they don't like to compete at things that they're not good at. Right. So they'll avoid let's say you're great at a sport, but then I'm not great at playing spades. Or chess or checkers or those kind of things, right? Like somebody will say something like that. I'm not that guy. I think that I could have never done something before, like never done it and still be upset that I'm not beating the person, right? So you show up at like a Major League Baseball game. And I've never even really played baseball particularly competitively.
Yeah.
But if I had to go batting practice against a pro, there would still be some part of me that's like, well, at least I'm not going to go out like a scrub. I know I'm competing. Maybe you're competing against yourself, but man, you said something about winning. I love winning. Winning feels so good because there's something about it. And I'm willing to admit that as we dive into it, there could be moments where it's not the healthiest thing that's ever happened.
Okay.
But I tend to define myself by the ability to do something. And so for instance, I had to, we talked about it a little bit ago, I had to present to the board of trustees at Chowan University the other day. Yeah. And I feel competitive about that. How am I doing? Am I winning the room? Am I there's when I think of competition, I think of the standards we set. And that's really what you're competing against, right? So in a basketball game, you either win or you lose, right? But then inside of the game, it's am I winning my matchup? If I'm a point guard, am I stopping the other point guard from scoring while also scoring more points than them? Or am I playing defense well? Just even the microscopic, are you winning a possession? One time getting the basketball, am I stopping them this time? And then you switch to the next possession. So I'm competitive even in the micro. Macro competitive, I want to feel like I win at life. But I think in the macro, I think about my whole life as a journey, it's a weird thing for me. I'm way more comfortable, right? Giving God the victory in that, saying, man, God did these things for me. And somehow, and this is my challenge in the micro, in those moments, possession by possession, if you will, in your life where, it's I have a meeting coming up or the thing we just talked about a minute ago where I was presenting to the board of trustees, I get competitive and there's some part of me that's I wish I could just be hey, God, you got this. I'm not competing. You're going to take this. You're going to take it and run. So I'm super competitive. I'm willing to admit that maybe to an unhealthy degree. I don't even like saying that out loud because that feels I'm okay. There's something about that feels like quitting. Oh, well, I'm unhealthy about it, so I'm going to back down. I am not. Probably. So, but in that way, so here's a positive thing I would say, and then I'll kick it back to you and we'll kind of flesh this out. So for you and I, we're both competitive, but to me, and I don't know if you feel this way or not, I don't mind being as competitive as I am because it drives me to learn more or do more, create more. And not just for the sake of more, but I really like feeling capable, if that makes sense. So let's say you sit down to play a game of chess, right? And you feel good there, but then somebody's let's go throw a football. And maybe you're well, I don't know. I didn't practice that. Or now somebody's talking about pop culture trivia or somebody's referencing the Bible right? How much have you learned? And how much are you retaining? Now, I know for some people, retention is just natural. And maybe I'm one of those people. Like I'm willing to admit that. Like it just sticks with me. Like I remember statistics, I remember stories, and it tends to stay with me. But I'm so competitive about it. Like, and not even to the point where I'm upset with, I'm trying to think how to say it, like the standard or person I'm competing with. Like, I don't think I get irrationally angry if I don't win. I'm just like, okay, you beat me one time, like it's going to happen once.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you beat me again, I got to learn more. I got to go. Like I have to keep improving. That's what I would say. Okay. The word is improving. Like I want to always be improving. So if you're just sitting still and you're not getting smarter about whatever it is, finances, the Bible, your relationships with people, like how do people work? Why do people work that way? Can you get better at interacting with people? All those things, I'm competitive at least with myself. I cannot think of one thing that I'm not competitive with myself about. So maybe I'm wrong. We'll dive into it. I don't know. But as I'm walking through it, like I would compete with me. Even if I'm just thinking about things I want to do better or get better at, I am competing with me all the time.
Okay.
So I don't know where do you land on that? Where's competitiveness for you?
Oh man. So competitiveness for me, it's this thing that, me and you were, I think we're kind of like the same personality on this. Like we're driven, like we want to compete. And so for me, it's the ingredient that makes us better. Competing it causes you to stretch, because nobody really wants to play against somebody who they know they're going to win. I mean, dominating is one thing, but it gets a little boring if you're dominating everything. It's like, am I in the wrong area? And should I level up? Should I go to the next level of whatever I'm doing?
Yeah.
Right. So I break competing down to a couple different things that kind of help my life in other different areas. Right. I got like a list of things that help me compete. Right. And so for number one, like if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, I want to get better at this. If you want to compete in anything in life, right, the number one thing you have to do is prepare. Right. You're not really competing if you're not preparing. Right. So if you're a professor like Jason and you want to be on top of your game and you're not preparing to be the best, if you're not finding innovative ways to teach students and to help them to learn, if you're just going to keep doing the same old thing, let me tell you something. You're not competing. You're just you're just playing the game. You're just surviving. That's not competing, right? You're not taking it to the next level. So preparation is key. If you want to improve yourself, your body, how you look, how you feel, right? If you're not preparing for that by what you eat and if you train and different things you can do to improve yourself, then you're not competing to make yourself better, right? And so preparation is key. That's like the first thing. The second most important thing for me in competing, well, it could be the first, but it's pretty important, is showing up. Like I know people who prepare for something and then they don't show up. Like, hey, how was that test? I missed it. How does that work?
I studied really hard, but I didn't show up.
Yeah. I know people who are studying for the LSAT and the MCAT, and they're like, when are you going to take the test? When are you going to show up, right, at that thing, right, to show off that preparation you've done and put it to work, right? So I believe there's some people in the background that they're slow rolling their preparation because they're not showing up.
Or they're not, they don't want to have to show up.
Yeah, they're just
like you just go slow. Man, that's good. Slow in the prep. Like I'm just going to continue to prepare for years.
Yeah. Here's a little twist to it, right? Here's a twist that I've learned. If you don't put a deadline on it, whatever you are pushing for in life, whatever you're competing for, right? Say, and I'm gonna speak life into some people who have some goals on their list, right? If you got 20 pounds to lose and there's no date attached to it, there's nothing to show up to. And guess what? If there's nothing to show up to, you're gonna be preparing for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm cooking dinner and dinner's at 5, well, if it's 4:30, I got to get moving, right?
That's right. Yeah,
I got to get moving, right? So I can't take the next 3 hours to prepare for it. I got a deadline at 5 o'clock's dinner. I got to be ready. And so If you want to compete in anything in life, improve, make better, right? You got to show up. You got to attach a date to it. You got to show up. You got to face your fears, and you got to do it. And so, to round all that off, right? The final piece to that, right? This is probably the best piece, because if you prepare and you show up, this is bound to happen. Even if you fail 100 times, if you keep using the process, prepare, show up, you're gonna win, right? So you have to have the ability to want to win, right? You can't want to fail, and it can't be like whatever happens happens. That's not going to work, right? Like if you go through life like whatever, if it's for me, will happen. That's not how it works. If you go through life and you're like, well, if I get it, I get it. Like there's got to be a little bit more effort in there, a little bit more intentionality about going after things. Competition is fierce, right? It is, especially if you're competing against yourself and it's something you want to do for yourself that will bring God glory, or something that you're doing for God. If you're not giving it 100%, if you don't want to win, if you don't want to be the best, then ultimately you probably won't be.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
that's
for me,
good.
competition it's melted in those three subcategories, right? That kind of builds that momentum, and it helps you. It brings, like, whatever you're doing, the preparation, the journey itself, right, will make you a better, different person, right? Showing up will help you, right, face things that you don't think you're good at, or things that you're working at. It will help you. And that winning spirit, let me tell you, winning is contagious.
Yeah.
If you're losing in life right now, get around some people who are winning, because it's contagious. You will catch fire. You will want that win. And if you are winning in life, you want to keep on winning, right? And so that takes preparation and showing up every day. And so that's how I kind of roll, competing into like everyday life. And, I have fun with it. I enjoy it. I don't make it too stressful, and I don't get upset over the failures and losses, right? Because the failures and losses are part of it, right? You don't know how good a win is until you know how bad a failure is, right? So, so you got to keep pushing. Don't get discouraged, right? So that's my encouragement. That's kind of how I face it. I just know I'm not playing Jason in basketball anytime soon, because I haven't prepared, and I definitely ain't showing up. This man has a mean crossover.
Listen, I appreciate it, man.
I'd have to foul him, like, elbow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would just stay away from the big body in the middle. You know what I mean? The truth is, like, as you were talking, I thought about wavelengths, right? And so what you said was really so good about, you just prepare, you show up, and then you win. And so for some people, I think, I guess I want to approach it this way. I've heard over and over in my life again, and I disagree with this wholeheartedly, but I've heard so many times that competition can be unhealthy. But, well, hold on, let me say that. It can be, but I hear that competition is unhealthy. And I always think, why? And I was trying to kind of analyze it as we were talking, and I think it's a wavelength thing. So you just said, right? So when you show up, you prepare, you show up, and then you win. Well, sometimes you fail. And you did mention that, right? It's a wavelength thing. Like, how good does winning feel? You go way up. But if you allow your wavelengths to go way down when you fail, right? I think that's where competition becomes unhealthy. So for instance, if I win in a basketball game, right? It's easy to be happy. It's easy to be a good sportsman, right? You're like, hey, to go high five the other team. Well, yeah, that's easy when you get to hold your head up high and hold the trophy. When you lose, that's when the measure of how healthy or unhealthy competition is once the competition is over, like once the time has come to like settle differences or whatever it is, even with yourself. Are you beating yourself up? Are you like so mad that you throw a chair? Well, yeah, maybe competition isn't the thing that's unhealthy. Maybe your reaction to competition is the thing that's unhealthy. And that's what hit me, is like, for anybody thinking like they see a competition, banner on the episode, and they think like, well, it's easy for these guys to say because they've won some things. We have some things. They have X number of subscribers. We have these certain jobs we talk about. We have all these kids. Like, oh, of course. Like, it's easy for guys that win to talk about it. But you and I lose occasionally too.
Oh yeah.
But I think the thing that you and I have in common that we've like talked about a little bit, or we've been able to work through, and I think it makes our friendship stronger, all these things, is like in the times where we're approaching a loss, or we have a loss, or we think it's a loss, or like you're feeling like you're not winning. I don't think either you or I drop off a cliff. Like you can soar, right? When you win, I think for me, when I win, I am soaring. Like I am cloud nine. We did it, man. I'm flying. But in an interesting way, my wavelength doesn't match downward. It doesn't then, if I lose, drop way off, because what I believe is the next time I'm going to soar.
Ooh.
So I think it's the mental approach to competition in terms of like, if you lose, it doesn't define you. So maybe in that way, I should, just like as a caveat, I should recognize that when I win, it doesn't define me either. Like who I think Jesus is defines me.
Come on.
So, but that's maybe that's the unhealthy side of winning sometimes, is like you start taking credit because you're soaring so high. And maybe that's the challenge, is don't let your wavelength be so dramatic. Just stay, you go up a little, man, we did it, feels good, God gets credit. We go down, oh, it's just a little bit. We're coming right back up, because what we're going to do the next day is what Coach Warren was breaking out for us. He was saying, prepare and show up, and then you win, right? So you lose the basketball game. The way that you win in that scenario is by going back to practice the next day.
There you go.
You don't quit playing basketball when you lose a game. You don't stop working out when you gain a pound, right? It's not like or I guess I know some people are trying to gain pounds because of muscle, but like if you're going the direction you don't want to go, you don't then quit and not prepare. And so I think that's where competition gets unhealthy, or can be. And so maybe that's me challenging the listeners, is like, if your reaction to competition in either direction is unhealthy in terms of like defining your life, that's where I would question whether competition is healthy for you. It's not competition itself. It's your reaction.
It's your approach, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess it's the same with people. It's the same with jobs. Anything that you're investing in. Sometimes we do this thing where we accuse the thing that we're striving for, or like the competition we're in, as the unhealthy part. Maybe your reaction to it is the unhealthy part. Like,
I agree.
You have to be aware of how it impacts you, and what you're going to do when the world that's imperfect brings something to you that's imperfect. So anyway, that's what hit me while you were talking, was like, you talked about failure, but I noticed that you talked about it so, I would honestly say, glowingly. Like when you talked about failure, it was kind of like, yeah, failure. It's all good. It's like, whoa, most people for failure. I mean, I'm talking about, I know people where failure will define, one failure could define the next few decades of their life. And so you don't want that. That's not actually true. Whatever, let me just encourage somebody right now. Like, whatever failure you've had in your life, no matter what it is, that doesn't even define the next year of your life, much less the next decade or two. Now you can let it, you get to choose that.
Come on.
Because what happens is, I think people stop preparing and stop showing up. They live right there, whether it's a win or a loss, right at the end of it. They live right there at the end of that one, and they never start the next, let's call it the next competition. Like getting better tomorrow. That's the next competition. Like some people just stop. And so don't stop. I actually think I would encourage you to compete, even if it's with competing against the alarm clock. Like, all right, this time we're going to get up. Like, we're going to do it. And so it's too much. There's so much focus. Like, I think that there's so much focus on yesterday.
Come on.
That people forget tomorrow. And so I just like, I mean, when you're competing, it's about today. Like right now, today. How we feeling? We doing good? All right. So for me, this really happened this morning. I went and got Starbucks to drink, and I had to compete with myself not to pull into the McDonald's drive-through and be like, I know I'm trying to do good, but man, those bagels, those bacon, egg, and cheese bagels look really good. And I just had to go. Like, no, I'm competing with, like, no, stop it.
Yeah.
Like, get out of there. So sometimes you're competing with yourself. Like, stop yourself, So anyways, it's your reaction to that. And I'm not going to continue to beat myself up about thinking about McDonald's. I'm not going to, like, we stop right there.
Yeah.
The competition's over. Now I show up, I prepare, and I show up the next day. So
that's good, man.
Anyway, thanks.
Good.
Man. I appreciate that.
I love that piece you dropped in there. Because we're talking about failure a little bit, right? Because it's part of the competition. You're going to fail, right? And you talked about how not going too low, right? And I think that we've kind of grown in a position, and this is my heart for everyone to get here, is that number one, expect the failure. It's gonna come. When it shows up, it doesn't surprise you, right? So understand that whatever you're doing, you won't always be on top. You won't always win. Every battle, you're not gonna win. If that was the case, we wouldn't need Jesus, right? Like, so we wouldn't need a savior, right? Especially when we're talking about competing against doing what's right and sin in our life, right? And so we need that. We need that help. That's our ever present help, right? And so the problem with failure, right, and why it can get us so low is because we were never born to live in failure. We were never born to stay there, right? It's a place that we visit, right? It's a place that we go to, but it's not a place that we stay. We weren't born to be failures, right? The Bible even teaches us that God has come so that we may have life and have it more abundantly, right? And so that's the reason we were saved, right? He wants to give us an abundant life, right? Not just filled with things, but filled with joy that only comes from Him. And so when we experience failure, our attitude should be that even in failure we win, because we're getting something out of this failure, right?
Yeah.
I'm drawn back to a story. When Curtis was a ninth grader, he ran cross country. And his first cross country meet, he got destroyed. Like,
okay,
I was like, it was like 40
That's
runners,
That's hard.
and he was like 38. Like, he came in like 38,
Low.
and so
Low on the
So I'm a proud papa. I'm out there. I'm like, let's go. I'm just glad he finished. I'm finding the silver lining, but man, he was bad. I think the two the two people behind him were like limping or whatever. It was just
injured. He was dragging them because they were on gurneys. Yeah,
it was bad, but he finished. So I was like,
Curtis,
let's go.
hey Curtis, if you're listening, I'm sorry, bro. Like,
it's okay, Curtis.
We love you, man. We love you.
And so that was a super L. Like, I don't know if I'd have ran cross country again. If I was him, I'd have been like, I don't know if this is my sport. This is, because his team was out there, the people who he trained with, and his coach and everything. But
parents, everybody's watching.
Yeah, that was the first race of the season. And fast forward, I didn't give him a hard time. I was like, hey man, just keep working at it, keep pushing. But I remember the look on his face. Like, the look on his face was like, by the last race of the season, he was in third place. I mean, he was medaling, and the field was bigger. And I'm like, what happened between the first failure and the win at the end? Like, how did you have that great of improvement? I think he got most improved for his team that year. And I was just like, how did you close that gap? He was like, I just worked harder at it. I just kept showing up to practice. I kept running. I knew I was slow, and I just kept listening to the coaches, and he eventually got better. He wanted to win. Like, he didn't even know what winning looked like, because he was
he couldn't see it from there. That's messed up, dude.
I'm just saying because some of us can be in that position, right? We don't even know what winning looks like. We're so far behind. We're so deep in it. We don't even know where the winning line is. We're just trying to, survive, right?
To finish, yeah.
But if you just keep preparing, right? Keep showing up to practice. Don't get discouraged. Like, he stuck with it. And that had to be a hard thing for him, but he proved something to himself, that he could do it. That if he stayed faithful to what he was doing, and he kept showing up and giving his all, that he could improve, that he could be an elite runner. And he is. And that taught me something just watching it. Because after the first one, I didn't go to many more meets. I was like, well, just let me know, buddy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, just in case he wasn't improving, I didn't want to put pressure by my presence there. Right. And so, it was surprising to see how far he had come. Right. So I say that to say this about preparation, right? You can't just mail it in. You can't just, there's no shortcuts, right? To whatever you're trying to do in life. And I know, as I speak to a Christian audience of believers, and some of you out there may not be believers, you may think that God's going to show up and do it for you, right? That a miracle is going to happen every time you're supposed to show up and you're supposed to prepare, right? And so I just want to kind of align you with, that's just not the way it's going to work. Does intervention, does favor happen? Does supernatural power happen? Absolutely, right? But God's not supernaturally going to pull you out of bed every morning and get you started. What's going to happen is he's going to wake you up. and the choice will be yours to use what he's given you. And that's health, strength,
Yeah.
ability, right? I know we're talking a lot and we're connecting a lot to physical things, right? But what if it's your ability to study for it? You're in school. What if it's your ability to perform on your job? What if it's your ability to perform in your relationship as a spouse or as a father, right?
Yeah.
Like, God's not going to supernaturally make your relationships better. That's going to take some preparation on you. That's going to take some forethought, some planning, and some work, right? You got to show up for those things, right? So you can't just mail in your effort and think you're going to win. You're not going to have, you're not going to raise great children if you put no effort into them, if you don't prepare them for what's next, right? You're not going to have a great marriage if you're not willing to do the work and willing to be there and show up and all that prep stuff, right? You have to put the effort behind it if you really want to compete. If you really want something great, then it's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you some effort, right? And so I didn't want to just, leave that preparation part out there and be like, yeah, just, before you walk into class, read the cliff notes, read the back of the book. That's bad preparation. You can keep doing that and showing up, but you're not going to win.
That's right.
There's going to be gaps that you're not going to be able to close. So part of competing is preparation. Are you prepared for what you're doing? And then how did you prepare? Are you really giving it your all? Right. And so I push people like to be a leader in your field, be a leader in what you're doing. And that's going to take more than probably you're giving right now. But in the end, you will benefit from it and God will get the glory from it. Right. So when I'm talking to somebody about Jesus, I do my best to not get emotional so they can not focus on me, but focus on him. But what I do is I try to be as honest and as complete as possible. I try not to mail it in. I try not to berate them with scriptures, right? I try to use the word of God practically so that I can meet them where they are, right? Now, if I'm talking to Bible scholars, and then we can really dig into the word of God. But if I'm talking to somebody who's just hurting and they don't know Jesus, if I just smack them with a bunch of scriptures, they're going to walk away confused. But if I tell them a practical position where I was when I find God, when he found me and what he's done for my life, that may help them more than, anything else I can do. So when you do things, give it your all, be prepared for what you're doing. And Jason, you've got a huge thing, right, happening in your life right now. I mean, it's enormous, right? And it's funny because we're talking about competing, and sometimes God puts us in places where we didn't even know we were competing for these things. We didn't even know that we just been preparing for kind of the vision that God has had for us. And I think for a few years now, you've just been preparing to be the best version of yourself. Like the amazing years of volunteer work and ministry you've done, the amount of lives that you've ushered into the kingdom of God. I mean, you've done amazing things with youth. And I feel like God's just kind of turning a page in your life as far as ministry. You've gone from being a super volunteer to being, top tier leading an organization in ministry. And often, we can feel inadequate. And God reminds us, like, not only have you been preparing, but I've been preparing you for this. Right. And so how do you feel like as you move forward in, being a campus minister, like, how do you feel that the work that you look back and you didn't even know you were preparing for this, right? But you kept showing up, and you showed up in a place where you weren't. It's funny because you're a professor of graphic design, right? But you've been professing Jesus and his love at the same time, right? Ooh, that rhyme, right? So
I dig it. It was good.
So how do you connect that? How do you connect those? How do you connect the person out there who they're preparing, but they don't really know what they're preparing for? Because I can guarantee you didn't see this coming, right? You didn't see what God was preparing you for. And just how do you encourage people to continue to show up for being the best them that they can be?
So for me, and I appreciate all your compliments, by the way. For me, it's really about you have to open up.
Come on.
And so what that means is when you're competing, you have to be ready for failure in order to achieve victory in something.
Okay.
Right? For God to be able to use you, you have to open up to the idea that like this is could be uncomfortable,
Mm.
right? And so I'm grateful that I think I just keep pursuing the day to day, like what you were saying is prepare and then show up. I think that's what I've been doing because I didn't have a clear vision, but God was telling me what was about to happen.
Mm.
So, I mean, we can give a little backstory or I don't even know if I've told this story on the pod before, but I was in Memphis, Tennessee, shout out, your current locale. I was over there a year ago, about a year ago this time.
Yeah.
At a youth conference. And man, as clear as you and I talking right now, I just heard God say, prepare for ministry with the next gen, with youth, right? The young people. And so certainly for at least a year, I've been mentally preparing for what I thought that meant. And so moving into maybe a pastoral role, maybe no longer being a professor, I wasn't really sure what God was doing, but I really wanted to listen. And so in order to prepare, in order to compete at this thing where like, I wasn't even sure, like what you were talking about with Curtis, it all comes together, right? Like what you were talking about, he can't see the finish line. Well, what does he have to do? Just you keep running.
Yeah.
And you're running the best you can. And so there were moments over this past year where I was so excited for what God's doing and like getting the opportunity to, you know, share with students in our church and like being able to kind of hone those public speaking skills and have small groups, have moments with students where you're building those things. And so because I was competing, I built let's call it like, I built a perception of what the finish line looks like. And so God does this wild thing where he doesn't say prepare for this finish line, right? He's saying prepare to run this race.
Come on.
And so you don't actually know what the finish line looks like. And as I'm now, maybe as I approach this finish line, that's what competing is, right? I'm approaching a finish line of like God's plan in this one moment in my life. It's the beginning of another race.
Okay.
And so what I'm doing, so for those that don't know, like we talk about jobs and Master Chief and Professor on the pod a lot, but in the last week or two, I also got hired as the interim minister to the university here at Chowan University. So I will be helping guide our students to Jesus. That's how I'm thinking of it. That's basically the entire, my goal is to show God, show Jesus and his love to as many students on our campus as I can. And it is an honor. It is a huge responsibility. It's one that I don't even know that I appreciated how big of an honor or responsibility that it's going to be, because as I'm stepping into it, I'm doing my best to do one step at a time in the race. You're just running. And to me, I want to trust God about what the finish line looks like.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm trying to extend the metaphor a little bit. Like as I'm diving into the role, I'm seeing how many miles the race will be, or I'm seeing like the ways that God has prepared the exact right metaphorical sneakers and the right equipment and the right coaches and like all these things that have been coming in my life for the last, 20 plus years, have really been prepping me for this moment. And it's just awesome, but it's not what I thought it would look like. So when you're competing, I think the goal can change. I think you have to be prepared for that, like when God moves. And so I'm still competitive. Like I still want to go out there and reach as many people as I can for the kingdom. I want to say the right things. Let's be real. I want to look the part. Like I want to have a healthier lifestyle so that anything that I do in my life could potentially be beyond reproach so that it doesn't distract from Jesus. Yeah. Right. And the challenges I do face in my life, I want to be honest about them so then it doesn't distract from Jesus. Yeah. That's the goal. I don't want to distract from Jesus. And so funny enough, that's my most recent competition is right now over the next year, over the next rest of my life, let's say. I feel like I'm competing with being the best conduit for what God wants to do.
Ooh.
So, and not trying to take back over.
Ooh.
Me not trying to like rope it back in,
Yeah.
pull it back in, and do what I think is best.
Yeah.
I'm competing against pride.
Come on.
So that's where I'm at. Is it's not about me. I don't want it to be about me.
Wow.
In a role like this, where at our university, as a faith-based Christian university, right now the role I'm stepping into is fresh and fresh for me, but we've had someone in the role for 20 years.
Mhm.
And so it's not an unknown role to the community. And so as this next semester starts, I don't even know that I'm prepared for what kind of reception, what kind of responsibilities there will be. And that's okay, because I think God has prepped. Like, I'm not prepared for the specific thing because I don't know what it looks like yet.
Yeah.
But what I am prepared for is knowing where God's calling
Come on.
and where he's leading. So another thing I'm competing with that's not just pride is competing with the noise, like to get the noise out of my life. And so I have to, and I keep using, man, it was so good what you said, like to prepare and show up is dive into my Bible, trust what God's saying, trust what he gives me that day, and trust that his provision is enough for the day.
Yeah.
You know, God will provide for sparrows and lilies. Of course he'll provide for us.
Absolutely.
And so I just think like, I know I'm going to be competitive. I know I'm going to want to be a perfectionist in some moments. I know, like you were asking, what does that look like for preparing? The competition I have now is not to take it back over. Like, I need to compete against pride and say, it's not mine.
Yeah.
Whatever happens next is God's, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So what does the prep look like for that? Well, like, remind yourself you're not perfect.
Yeah.
You're not, like, humbly, you just have to be ready each day for the students, for
So
the
good.
maybe fellow faculty, maybe staff members who they just need somebody. And so
Yeah.
the minute that you step into a ministry role, it's something totally different.
Yeah.
Like you got to be ready for whatever comes, because people are just looking for help. And I don't want to point at myself. I want to point at God.
Come
I want to
on.
point at Jesus and just say, I can't solve it, but I know somebody that can. So that's my current competition. I appreciate the shout out, man.
It's good,
I didn't
man.
expect the episode to go here, and like, it's such an honor, man. Like, it's who knows what God will do.
Yeah.
So preparing and showing up and competing day to day
Mhm.
leads you to victory long term.
Come on.
Like, and by the way, victory is the Lord's. Like,
Come on.
that's how this goes.
Yeah.
And so we know the ending of the story. I think
Yeah.
you've said that in previous episodes, and people may have heard that in Christian settings, but like, as a Christian, we know how everything goes.
Yeah.
And so I'm not concerned about the podium, right? I'm concerned about, or how about this? I'm not concerned about me being on the podium. Like, I want to make sure, let's do a little Paris Olympics shout out here. Like, in terms of competing,
Yeah.
I just want God to get the glory.
Come
He gets
on.
the gold, right?
So good.
And I get to be a part of that journey. And so that's what it feels like to me. That's what it feels like for prepping is if I can encourage people,
Mhm.
if you're preparing for something, if you think God is moving, or you're working for a goal, or you're like, man, I want to be the best lawyer,
Come on.
doctor, professor, physical trainer, pro athlete, mom, stay-at-home mom that homeschools. I want to be the best preschool teacher. Whatever the thing is that you're competing with other people, or you're competing with yourself at, focus on what God is telling you to do.
Come on.
Day to day, focus on how God is moving in your life, and he's going to guide those steps. And then you won't even be able to take credit. There's no way I could take credit for what God is doing now in my life.
So good.
Because like you said, this professor of graphic design, our university is trusting with a ministry role that I know I'm prepared for, but outwardly, God can only get the credit for that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go through traditional steps to get it.
Mhm.
And I didn't, here's the weird thing, man. God is like a cheat code. I didn't have to compete for this. Like, I wasn't out there. I was competing to be the best, lover of people. Like,
Mhm.
like when you care about people, when you have relationships with people, and that's what's opening up these doors. Is I'm not competing for glory. I was competing to be the most compassionate leader or friend or
Mhm.
person that I can be. And I feel like people refer to that.
Yeah.
Like, it helps your journey. And so that's where I'm at, man.
It
And
was
by the
so
way,
good.
that felt like it was all over the place. Like, right now I'm competing to end with a strong point. But that was kind of been my journey lately,
It's
is,
so good,
is
man.
realizing that I'm just competing with the next version of myself tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what we got to do.
That's
all
so
you can
good.
control.
That's so good.
So
I feel like
thanks,
somebody needed to hear that. They need to experience that, man. Because I've had a front row ticket to just watch like the whole like throughout our friendship and just see like the consistency, right? The faithfulness in just doing what you do, and like even the turns and twists that you've kind of experienced throughout, serving at church and growing in ministry and going on, summer retreats with youth, like all that, like. And so I just encourage people as you're walking this life out with God, and you're preparing and you're showing up as your best self in life, and you are competing at different things, right? Follow what God is calling you to do. Jason already said it. I got to hit on that. Follow what God is calling you to do, because you don't even know like what you're being prepared for, what you're getting, what you're competing for right now. And, God has a great plan for your life, but you must continue. You can't mail your effort in. Give it your all, show up, continue to show up, even when it's tough, show up. Right. And you are going to win, right? You're going to win. Right. And and if you're experiencing failure right now, embrace those as well, because without the failures, you don't know you're in 38th place. You have no idea. You have no idea where you're at and where you need to go. And so to get better, you need those failures, and you got to continue to prepare and show up, man. This has helped me. Thank you, Jason, for, just sharing, cause we get personal on, and this is a huge milestone, but for us, it's something, but for God, right? What we get to do and speak life into people through Lowercase Church and through what you're getting ready to do at Chowan is it's phenomenal, man. I'm honored to be on this journey with you. I'm honored to be able to speak life into all of our viewers, man. And if we could end with one thing, it would be like, if you're not competing, get out of the stands and start competing in life. Don't mail it in. Let's go.
I would say start competing, and don't let those failures get a big wavelength.
Come on.
Right? Keep competing. It's so worth it.
Yep.
It's so valuable. Warren, man, I appreciate you too, buddy. Like, you are crushing everything that you go for. I can see God preparing something special in your life, man. I know it's coming. It's like the wave is coming. Like, do a little Hawaii reference for you there at the end. So yeah, I mean, aloha, man. Like, I think it's gonna be awesome. I think God is gonna keep working.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna keep cooking. And I know you and I are gonna keep competing to give him the glory as best we can.
Absolutely, man.
And I think that's what encourages me the most about our friendship, about everything we got going on.
So good.
So let me pray us out, man. I think that's good. I can't think of a better way to finish it.
so good. Thank you.
Anyway, yeah, man. God, I just thank you so much for competition, for the ability to have healthy goals, to have healthy guides from you, God, just about how we're going to show up and what we're going to be doing, and one step after the other. I just thank you so much that you created a spirit in us where we want to get more of you, to get more victory, to get more just whole as we grow and change and shift. And as you bring new ways to compete in our life, God, I pray that you would help us focus on you getting the glory and not us, you being on the podium and not us. I just thank you so much for this pod. I thank you for Warren and just the time that we get to spend together, sharing our lives and just chewing on all these different ideas, God. It's just a blessing. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for continuing to bless everything that we compete in. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
So good. We'll see you in the next one, guys.